Ken Levine. I'm the creative director of BioShock Infinite.
Bring us the girl and wipe away the debt. That was the deal. The details elude me now. But the details wouldn't change a goddamn thing.
It's been 6 years since you last released a game.
Five.
5? Well, it will be 6 years next year, right?
5.5.
5.5. How has the industry changed in that time?
Well, there was no social games, really. There was no free-to-play or much free-to-play. There was no iPad. There was no iPhone. There was no Android. It's changed a lot. There was no Connect. There was no, you name it. Things change, but, they also stay the same in the sense that people like to play good games, and the question is, what platform they play them on, and how do they want them delivered, how do they want to pay for them. So a lot's changed, but also what hasn't changed is people like cool games.
Do you think the audience has changed much for the AAA titles?
I think the audience is buying. They're buying a smaller group of titles in larger numbers. So they're only really investing in the surest bets, and they're buying a lot of those, and that's got some knock-on effects, I think, for the industry, that it's harder to get sort of mid-rangey titles, AA titles set up and developed. But on the other hand, you've got games for $1, and games for $2 and $5 that are available on the iOS side, Android side.
Does that make it tricky for you, considering that BioShock was a huge franchise 5.5 years ago, and now it's almost a new audience coming through that you have to kind of reflect what the franchise is about in this new title, as well as reach the old gamers that bought BioShock and loved it?
I think it's always a challenge to make a game, make it good, and sell it to people. I think it's always a challenge. And it gets harder in some ways because, the market is more fragmented, but it also gets easier because the install base is larger. It's easier because now people know the brand, but it's harder because there's a lot of competition for really big titles, and people are spending a lot of money on making these games, and so you have to sort of keep up with that. But at the end of the day, you got to make a good game. If you don't have a good game, you don't have anything.
There's been a lot of changes at Irrational in the last year or so, especially one of the big introductions you had was that Rod Ferguson came across from Epic. What has Rod brought to the team?
Rod is, a very seasoned developer who, whenever you can get a developer like Rod to come on, you're foolish if you don't take him. And he's, has a great amount of experience, and an experience in the production side, which is sort of not my background. My background is more on the creative side. It's like having another very serious guy who shipped a ton of games, and it's hard. The experience of shipping a lot of games gives you a background that it's hard to understand unless you've done it. It just lets you know what to worry about and what not to worry about in a way that when you're just starting out, you can often be distracted by things that don't matter and miss things that really do matter. He's just a very talented developer.
And you've obviously the big loss for them, Nate Wells went to Naughty Dog. Because obviously he was one of the big kind of art guys in the industry. How much has that affected the development of the title?
It's actually odd because we love Nate, but the same thing happened on the first game to some degree. Nate was the art director, and for various reasons, Scott Sinclair became the art director. And in this game, Nate was the art director, and for various reasons, Scott Sinclair became the art director. And I think you can take a look at the game, and you're a better judge of me than I could be. It's the visual quality of the game. I think it's stunning, and they made some great contributions, but and Scott at the end of the day, is the one who brought it home.
And there's been a few notable delays since the announcement of the original dates and stuff. How have you spent that time?
Well, it's been 5 months of delays. We already announced it was going to be October, and now it's March. That goes very quickly in game development terms. That's like 10 seconds in dog years. You spend it basically by, part of it is, wow, that took a little longer than we thought it would, and part of it is like this last month delay is, it would be great if we had a little more time to polish. And polish sounds dull, but I think it's hard to underestimate how important polish is to a great title. Basically, if you look at any great title, the thing that all great titles share in common is polish. An unstable, unpolished game that's not with a bad performance is really almost never fun to play. A lot of games have been ruined by lack of polish. When you talk about when a guy like Rod comes on board and says, "Hey, this game could use another 3 or 4 weeks of polish," it's really not much of a debate. You just sort of say, "Okay, now, all right, well, just how are we going to communicate this to our fans who are waiting anxiously for it?" But all you can do is assure them that maybe a month later they'll have a much better game.
What was the reaction like from the publisher side? Were 2K great, was it?
They want a great game.
Yeah.
That's all they care about. They care about, yes, of course they care about dates, but they're, I think, rare in that sense that they truly believe in quality.
And in that time, literally in the last year, we seem to be seeing, especially these days, more and more of Elizabeth. How has she changed? You were talking earlier on about how she's changed as a character over the last year. Can you just kind of talk us through that process and where that came from?
Well, she hasn't changed as a character. Her function, her things she can do in the world has expanded. She's basically the same person that we were writing, that we showed at E3 last year. But the reaction to her was so strong, and our attachment to her was so strong, we felt she could just be doing more and more. We had all these aspects of her personality, and we said, well, what if we start reflecting her personality across other things she can do? She was always this sort of nerdy girl who had all these interests, reading in her tower about lockpicking and cryptography and medicine and all this other stuff, and music and art. And we just want to reflect that in the course of the game. And so she does all these things for you, giving you reloads in battle, to tossing you money. She finds money under the couch sometimes to hook you up, to reviving you when you go down in combat, to opening tears, to picking locks. She's just a pretty amazingly capable woman. She had plenty of time to learn these things. She was locked in that tower of hers. So the narrative Liz is still very much the narrative Liz. The sort of what she can do as an AI has really expanded.
But was that tricky for you? Because in the original BioShock, you had the one main character, and now in Infinite, you've got 2 kind of main characters. You have to split the focus. How hard is that to get into?
Oh, you really had no main characters in BioShock. Yeah. Right? Jack really by design, had no personality and no character. It was tricky, absolutely. It was very challenging, but it was worth it. I think you can imagine playing this game without Elizabeth and without Booker talking. It would be a very different experience. I think a much smaller experience, let alone what it means for the storyline, which is, they're the center of the storyline. It's very much a story about them and their journey. In the same way that, Lord of the Rings is about Frodo and how he changes, even though it's about all these other things as well. That friendship between Sam and Frodo carries that story, and in the same way the relationship between Booker and Elizabeth carry this story. The game is out on March 26, 2013.
We are free in the land of America.
So
I can't stare creepily at the camera.
You can do if you want.